I have been practicing immigration law for the past 15 years, and it is my pleasure to do the work that I do because I believe that immigrants make America great already. So thank you for joining. Let me know what country you're from, what state you live in. I always love to hear where all of my clients are from or all of my followers are from. And if you're a current client, thank you for joining. Thank you for trusting us with your case. And it's nice to see you again. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's get started with one of the top questions of the day that we got, which is today, what is happening with immigration cases? Is it going to slow down? Are things going to get denied? Are we going to see persons getting into a lot more problems just from filing immigration cases? Here is what I can share with you right now. This year and the next few years, this is what I anticipate from Trump 2.0 from Trump 2.0, the second Trump administration. This is what I anticipate seeing as an immigration attorney who has also worked through the first Trump administration, let alone working in immigration for the past 15 years. And this is what we expect to see. We do expect to see a little bit of a slowdown in certain cases because of the fact that there's going to be various factors that will affect immigration decisions, including the scheduling of interviews that they may have formally waived in the past, shutdown in office services in case there's any sort of budget cuts or any sort of staffing cuts that they make to immigration. There might even be certain slowdowns in consulates across the oceans overseas. Also, we might see some additional processing time due to increased vetting and increased scrutiny on certain cases. But does this mean that we expect for cases to get denied or that we expect for cases to not get approved at all? And the answer is no. Even today, month to date so far, we keep receiving green cards and approvals of work permits and other cases all across the board. So we are not seeing additional denials as a result of Trump 2.0. Also, we are not seeing additional requests for evidence being issued. I will say that there have been a couple of cases where we have received notices of intent to deny right away, but instead of getting an RFE. But that started earlier underneath Biden, especially for even regular marriage cases. Instead of issuing a request for evidence, sometimes we were seeing immigration officers just issue straight away a notice of intent to deny. And my theory behind that is that they're just trying really hard to process the cases as quickly as possible. So the bottom line is that we don't really expect to see much of a difference in the way they decide cases, although there may be a little bit of a slowdown instead. And that's what happened before. This is something that we can expect to see again, maybe not to the extent of the first administration underneath Trump, because one of the other things that impacted processing times at that point was also the shutdowns due to COVID-19, okay? So go ahead and let me know what sort of questions you have today. Hello, everybody. Hello, Rick. Thank you so much. Jamil, Sapphire, Land of the Free, thank you so much. Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that. All right. So are you able to use the receipt notice from T Visa to apply for a driver's license in Florida from KK? KK, this is a great question. And the question that KK has from YouTube is, can you use your T Visa receipt to apply for a driver's license in Florida? And the answer is actually yes. Did you know that in the state of Florida, you can use your receipt notice from your VAWA case or your T Visa case to apply for a driver's license in Florida even before your case gets approved? This is actually written into the DMV, the rules and regulations of the Florida DMV. Or Department of Motor Vehicles, I forget, I don't know exactly what it's called, but yes, it is true that you can use your receipt notice from your T Visa case or from your VAWA case even to get a driver's license in Florida. However, I must tell you this. We have had some instances where the people at the DMV were not issuing licenses to my clients, and we had to write a letter. We had to look up the code book of the DMV, which is not actually easy to find, in order for us to draft a letter to show them that this is actually in your regulations, guys. This is actually in your regulations, and you must issue a license to my client. So even though it is the rule book, how easy will it be to actually get it issued? That it might be a little bit sticky, but it can still work, okay? So if you do have a T Visa in process and you do want to get a driver's license and you are in Florida, you can do that. However, I would say, again, the situation in Florida is a little bit more worrisome than others. So you still may want to proceed with a little bit of caution, okay? Thank you for that question. And hello to TikTok, hello to Instagram. I'm going to go ahead and answer questions in turn, so I really appreciate your patience. Do I speak Punjabi? No, I don't speak Punjabi. If immigrants come to the US with parole from the border and they're married to a US citizen, do you need to leave the country in order to get your green card, or can you get your green card here? That is a great question from Jeffrey in New York. And here's the answer. In order for you to do the regular green card process, otherwise known as a one-step adjustment of status process, where you file both the I-130 and the I-485 at the same time, where your spouse is sponsoring you, you do not necessarily need to leave the country if you have been paroled into the country or if you have a visa stamp entry to the country. So if you actually have a stamp in your passport that says parole, then for the most part, this should allow you to do your application here in the US without having to leave. But you always have to get this evaluated by an attorney to look at the stamp, because technically it's not admission to the country, but parole should allow you to do it. Every case is going to be different. Okay, Jeffrey, I hope that answers the question. Tayab, thank you for the roses. I had a biometrics done for my asylum. Can I apply for Social Security and food stamps or wait? I had a similar question from Sunny. Can I? That I can't really answer the question. You have to look up the regulations for Social Security and food stamps in order to see what the requirements are. Is USCIS waiving I-751 interviews? From Shinda, this is a very interesting question. If you have an I-751 application that you filed for removal of conditions on your applications, will USCIS waive your interview? And the answer is that it's going to depend. We have been receiving approvals of I-751s on the regular with no interview. However, we are also receiving interviews in other cases. For example, I had one this morning for a client for whom we filed a waiver for extreme cruelty and battery. But just last week, we got another one approved without an interview for the very same waiver. So every case is going to be different. Whether or not you get called in for an interview on your I-751 case is going to depend on so many different factors. Number one factor on whether or not you are going to get an interview in your I-751 case is going to be depending on, it's going to be because of whichever your local field office is. Because some field offices have different policies. Some field offices interview everybody. Other field offices only interview select types of cases. Why they choose who to interview, when and where, I can't really tell you why. Sometimes my theory is that sometimes if they don't like the evidence that you've submitted, if there have been any other issues. Also, if you came in on an immigrant visa in the first place and you are filing your I-751, it's usually standard policy for them to give you an interview because they never got to interview in the first place, okay? So whether or not USCIS is going to waive your I-751 interview depends on a variety of things, but I'm very happy to report to you that we have had I-751 cases approved without an interview for both joint cases and also for waiver cases where we've requested the extreme cruelty and battery waiver, which is amazing, of course. But I also want you to not be too afraid if you get called in for an interview on your I-751. The biggest factor to success in your I-751 interview is going to be preparation, and preparation. Okay, preparation. I cannot, over explain how important it is for you to be prepared for your I-751 interview, and that means both being prepared by having the right documents, enough documents, but also to have an attorney with you. Here is the truth. The I-751 is probably the most important part of your immigration process. If you have a 2-year resident card, the I-751 is actually the most important part, because usually by statute, by regulation, it's written that if your I-751 gets denied, then they have to issue you a notice to appear in court, which means that if your I-751 gets denied, you immediately get placed into removal proceedings, into deportation proceedings. That is why it is so important that you hire an attorney, especially if you get a request for evidence, especially if you get called in for an interview. Now, like sometimes it seems like these things are so simple, but there could be some trouble spots that you don't even understand, that you don't even think about. But here in my office, I have been doing I-751s for such a long time, and very, very complicated I-751s as well, where clients have divorced, clients have separated. I even did an I-751 many, many years ago where my clients had separated, but they never got divorced, but they still wanted to help each other on their interview. So both of them came to the interview and we had to explain what was going on. Now that was a very unusual situation, but I have also had I-751s where my clients have been abandoned by their spouses, where my clients have suffered emotional abuse, where they've suffered physical abuse, where they've gotten divorced, where they had no documentation whatsoever of their marriage, where they had no evidence of them living together. I have had I-751s approved for people who got denied I-751s underneath other attorneys. I have had I-751s for clients who ended up in deportation proceedings and we got them out. And I have even had I-751s approved for people who got issued a removal order where the judge signed for them to get deported. And we went back in, got it reopened, got it terminated, and refiled a new I-751, got it approved, got a green card for the client, okay? Multiple times. So when a lawyer tells you that you can't do this, when you have the 2-year resident card, I just want you to know that many things are possible, okay? And our telephone number is 212-248-7907 if you would like to have a case evaluation about your case. And additionally, if you have a 2-year resident card that is about to expire and you're not with your spouse any longer, you guys are separated, you're divorced, you're having problems, you're not living together, or you are living together, but you're worried about whether they're even going to go to the interview with you, you're worried about whether they're even going to sign the paperwork for you, this is a sign for you to call an attorney to find out what your options are. And we would be happy to take your phone call. We would be happy to book you for the next steps, because it is so critical at this juncture when you have a 2-year resident card that's about to expire. You don't want to end up in removal proceedings. And a lot of people end up in deportation proceedings unnecessarily. So if you do want a case evaluation, you can give us a call at 212-248-7907. La Rose, thank you so much. Can you continue to work with an expired EAD while waiting for a pending VAWA? From Guatrav. Well, technically, if you have an expired employment authorization, you're not authorized to work on an expired one. But if you file your renewal before it expires, then you should have an extension for at least a year and a half, okay? How to avoid secondary inspection. Can I file a DHS trip? Well, Achatro, if you are traveling on advanced parole, secondary inspection is part of the game, okay? But if you're a green card holder or a US citizen that keeps getting put into secondary inspection, then yes, you may want to do a DHS trip. Can you travel with a pending U visa? So if you have a bona fide EAD from your U visa, and if you want to travel domestically, then you might be okay, but you still have to be careful, because even these days there are certain persons with, like I just saw in one of my attorney groups that a client with an approved SIJS I-360 got detained, and they were able to get released on bond. But anyway, a lot of things are happening these days. Okay, definitely you cannot travel internationally. My parents came to US 80 days ago and they still did not get their green cards. 90 days to wait. What if I still haven't received from Warrior Mohawk? Warrior Mohawk, if your parents came in on the immigrant visa, they had an interview at the consulate and they came in with the immigrant visa in their passport. Anytime somebody comes in with an immigrant visa, you don't need to, you're not necessarily going to get your green card right away. Sometimes it could take 6 months to get, okay? Jeffrey, New York. Sorry, man, you sound a little bit rude. Can ICE deport pending VAWA applicants from Tamar AB? Tamar AB, yes, they can. Just because your application is pending does not mean that that you can get deported, especially if you get arrested for any sort of criminal act right now, especially if your criminal act falls under the Laken Riley Act, and that is going to be for any arrests having to do with theft or burglary or any sort of violence. Then you're going to get subjected to something called mandatory detention, and it's going to be a lot harder for you. They're not going to release you on bond if you get arrested for something like that, and it's going to be much tougher to prove your case, even if you have a pending VAWA application. Okay. Do you take cases in Nevada from Destino Divino Único? Destino Divino Único. Yes, I take cases in Nevada. We have clients all over. We have clients in Nevada as well. Not as many as I'd like, so please give us a call, 212-248-7907. How is New York City? From Noe Rojas. It's very, very cold. Super cold here in New York. I just saw a question. Let me just scroll back up. Can VAWA be approved in 24 months from Share Sweetie? Share Sweetie, yes, it can be, especially if you do an expedite. I want a withholding of removal case, but I still have a criminal record now with this new administration from Zelaya. Zelaya, oof, man, if you have withholding of removal, basically all that it means is that they ordered you removed, but they're basically withholding removal. They're not doing removal right now. So if you get arrested with that, that's not going to be good news. Okay, so don't get arrested. Follow the laws. Don't get in trouble. Don't hang around people that are getting in trouble. Now is not the time. I did see a question about a VAWA. Hey, Samantha, how are you, my love? How are you? I saw a question for somebody with an approved VAWA, but a removal order, which I'm just trying to find again. If you have an I-751 receipt with a 48-month extension, how long before you get a decision? Typically from Joe, we're seeing average decision time for I-751s to be about 2.5 years on average. Okay, from Ashley. Approved VAWA, final order removal, failed appeal, trying joint motion. Am I okay? From Ashley Ann. Okay, so let's talk about this. If you have been approved for VAWA, but you also have a final order of removal, fail appeal, trying a joint motion, are you okay? So let me share with you the story of a client of one of my clients. Okay, he actually came to me with an approved VAWA from 2017, and he had tried 3 different times to file for a motion to reopen his removal order so he could file for a green card and adjustment of status. Those 3 appeals and motions got denied 3 times, okay? Came to me. Now, when you file for VAWA, when you have an approved VAWA, there is actually special protections, especially if you have a removal order, and there's not really a limitation on when you can do it, but it's not very common, right? So I filed once, it got denied. I filed the 3rd time, it got denied, and I appealed it all the way to the circuit court. But at the same time, I also did a PD request, and they actually agreed on PD. I'm not too sure how it would have gone had it actually gone through the circuit court about it, but the best hope is for you to do also a PD. The joint motion, through the joint motion. The joint motion is your best shot, Ashley, okay? Ashley, good luck. I hope you can get your removal proceeding reopened and dismissed, or at least reopened so you can file for your I-485 with the judge, because the judge can also do the green card application in court, okay, Ashley? So good luck to you. If you need further assistance, you can give us a call. Can ICE deport people with DACA from AMBAM? Well, I would say they're not really touching people with DACA because you do have deferred action. However, you just want to avoid getting arrested at this point, okay? Does working in a separate state affect the removal of conditions from land of the free? Land of the free, yes, especially if you have addresses over there, or if you have, like they might run a search on you, and if they see different addresses come up, then that's probably going to be one of the reasons why they might call you for an interview or even request evidence for this. My N400 and I-751 are pending to have an interview assigned. My wife has her C-section scheduled. Is it a good idea to send our doctor's letters to USCIS to expedite our case? I'm from Jose Sanz. Jose Sanz, my recommendation to you is to just wait to see when your interview comes. Expediting is probably not going to help you much. It might even make the timing even worse. So if you do get a interview notice when your wife is still recovering from a C-section or when she's in the hospital, then you can always ask to reschedule at that time. But expediting is not going to be very, it's not going to be very, very reliable at this point. Amber, you and your sister have DACA. Should you be concerned about anything regarding the Trump administration? Amber, I think I kind of just answered that question about anyone with DACA and T visa and things like that. Just don't get arrested. I think if you avoid getting arrested, if you follow the laws, then for the most part you should be fine. And if you attended my the webinar that I did for current clients, you'll know some of the special information that I gave to clients. And if your prima facie is expired, then what I would do is we can go ahead and request an additional one. They don't always automatically send prima facie renewals. Okay. Hi, Steph. How are you? If your I-751 is still pending and your LPR card is expired, you need to apply for an EAD. No, you don't. You just need to apply for your renewal, and that is your permission, and that is your proof of your residency. Is it mandatory to file a waiver if the person accepted voluntary departure 19 years ago from Vanny Boo? Vanny Boo, that is a complicated question. If you accepted a voluntary departure 19 years ago, there's two possibilities. Number one is if you accepted voluntary departure, that basically means that you agreed with the court that you're going to leave voluntarily. So if you leave voluntarily and that was 19 years ago, and now you want to come back to the United States, you have a way to come back because you've got sponsorship, whatever the situation is, you probably don't need a waiver because it's been 19 years. You probably don't have any more bar to reentry anymore. But you still have to make sure that anything else that's an issue like fraud and other inadmissibilities are still taken care of. Now, here's the second scenario. If you accepted a voluntary departure, but you never left the US, that's another story, because basically if you take a voluntary departure, you don't leave the US, that voluntary departure turns into a removal order. And when it turns into a removal order, then we have to go through a bunch of different process because you didn't leave the US, and it makes things a little bit more complicated. So you not only might you need a waiver, but you need to actually reopen your case in court. Okay. And our phone number is 212-248-7907. Rosie Mendoza, sorry, I don't really know exactly what I said. To repeat, Graciela Lopez, how much time after fingerprints does it take for a case under VAWA to be approved? From Graciela, in total, VAWA cases are taking an average of 3 years to approve. So whenever you get your fingerprints, I don't really know how that, what that means for timing perspective, but overall, from the date that you file your case, from the date that it gets approved, it is approximately three years, sometimes 3.5 years, okay? Vidya, can you travel internationally if your green card is pending? From Vidya, I don't really know what that means. Like, is it pending renewal? Is it just pending being approved altogether? If you have advanced parole, you may be able to travel. If you have a green card that is expired and you file the renewal for it, then you'll get an extension, and you can usually travel with that. But most people like to wait for the actual application to be approved first. I have an I-130 approved, but would it affect my case if I work with a new attorney? From Destiny, no. It shouldn't affect your case, but you might want to I think that the most important thing is if you want to work with a new attorney, you have to ask yourself why. Because a lot of people want to work with a new attorney because they think that their case is taking too long and the attorney is not, doing anything, which, like it hurts me because I know like a lot of our cases, they take a lot of time, but that's not our fault because of the fact that the government takes so long. So a lot of times people complain and people feel upset that their case is taking too long. But for the most part, that is usually out of the attorney's control, and it's because the government is taking so long. For example, asylum cases are taking like 10 years to get an interview these days, right? So, but here is where you can definitely consider, and you should consider working with a different attorney, because when you're putting your life into somebody else's hands, the number one thing that I tell people is that you should work with somebody who you feel respected by and who you feel like actually cares what will happen to your future. Because the reality is that not every attorney is going to make you feel like you're respected, because not every attorney is going to respect you. A lot of attorneys don't really have that mentality that the client is somebody to take care of. Here at our law firm, we like to take care of our clients. We like to make sure that you feel like this is your journey and that you are in control. The last thing that we really want for our clients to feel is that you don't have any agency, that you don't have any control, and that you are disrespected by us, right? And I never want anyone to walk away from my law firm feeling that way. So because of the attitude that we have towards our clients, we take their cases very seriously as well. And, the majority, not the majority, but there's a lot of attorneys out there who, couldn't really care very much. So, when you feel like your attorney is basically downright not caring at all about you, disrespecting you, really, really just treating you in that way, then it's, it's always worth talking to different attorneys. Can I ask to speak to supervisor the day of my I-130 interview? From Tam Lowy. Yes, you can, but I guess you need to kind of figure out why. Hopefully you have an attorney representing you. DACA update from King Clav. King Clav, I don't have any update right now. Safe to travel with advanced parole from Sumit. Sumit, for the most part, it's okay, but I tell everybody, don't travel if you don't have to. Talk to your attorney before you travel. And lastly, if you have any criminal issues, it's not a good time to travel. Destino, thank you so much. What if the VAWA case is for men without physical abuse, from Dabby Campbell? Dabby Campbell, this is a great question. Can you do a VAWA case if you are a man and you don't have any physical abuse? The answer is yes, and we are living proof. We have had so many, at least 50% of our clients are men, and the majority of them don't really suffer a lot of physical abuse or any physical abuse at all. Of course, we do have some clients that are male who do suffer physical abuse, but a lot don't. And the same thing goes for our women clients as well, our female clients. Not everyone suffers physical abuse. The key to VAWA is not if you suffer physical abuse. The key to VAWA is whether you suffer extreme cruelty or battery. So whether you suffer emotional abuse or physical abuse, not both. You can have one or the other. Frequently, most people will have both together, but a lot of times it's just emotional abuse. And yes, you can win your case on just physical abuse. And yes, you can win your case without a police report. Yes, you can win your VAWA case without a medical report. Frequently, we don't have, 95% of our cases do not have any of that evidence. Most of our cases rest on the strength of affidavits. Sometimes we do psychological evaluations, sometimes we have witness statements, sometimes we have other evidence, but the majority of the cases that we have won in our office don't have any of that. So if you have been worried about whether or not you have enough, is your case strong enough, do you have enough proof to file your case, to win your case, I urge you to not worry about that, because the law has written inside of the statutes that Congress has signed, has created. It says that any credible evidence of your suffering counts for the case. This is true for VAWA cases. It's also true for T visa cases, which I'm not talking about right now. But if you are married to a US citizen or to a green card holder and you have suffered in your marriage, it does not matter. Your spouse need not raise their hand to you. They need not raise their hand to you. They just need to be hurting you psychologically, emotionally, verbally, financially. It could be that. Now, the opposite extreme is when you have physical abuse and sexual abuse. And unfortunately, that happens to a lot of people too. But I don't want you to stay suffering in your relationship because you think that just because you don't have that, you're going to lose your case. Any attorney that has told you that you can't win your case because you have no physical abuse and you have no proof of your physical abuse is unknowledgeable about this. And it's a shame because they're making you feel like your suffering is not enough. If you were to ask yourself, have I suffered? And if you say yes, then your suffering is your own, and it is enough for us. Okay, so if you do want to give us a call, our telephone number is 212-248-7907. Molina Flooring, I have my second prima facie. No request for evidence. That's good so far. Are you now getting bona fide determinations for a T visa case from KK? KK, I have to say it is just so sporadic. Sometimes we are getting very few bona fide determinations for our T visa cases, and there's like no rhyme or reason about why. For T visa, what if there are no evidence of abuse like text messages, but it's only verbal abuse? Will this help the case from Steph Cruz? Steph Cruz, absolutely. And it's great that I just talked about the fact that for T visa cases also, it is any credible evidence, whatever you have. And that's why your affidavit is so important in a T visa case and as well in a VAWA case. And the reality is that for VAWA cases, usually we have probably twice as much evidence for the most of our T visa cases. For T visa cases, it's almost only an affidavit alone because a lot of people's trafficking has occurred, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and most people are, usually working under the table and there's not really any proof. Sometimes there's a little bit of proof, but for the most part, not really. So Steph, if you are worried about your T visa case, I urge you not to be worried. And I just urge you, to make sure your affidavit is really, really good, okay? Would I be able to do a military PIP if my parents overstayed on a C1D visa from Muñequita? Muñequita, if your parents entered on a C1D visa, that is going to be very hard to fix. Usually there's only just a couple of types of cases where we can adjust people if they enter on a crewman's visa. That includes a DAWA. That'll include, like the typical cases like T visa, asylum, and U. If you're doing a military PIP, that may not help, but I'm not 100% sure actually. So give us a call. Maybe we can look it up for you, okay? Muñequita, 212-248-7907. Erica, is anything getting crossed with the new government regulations? Yes, they are. Let's see. Rhino, you can give us a call back, 212-248-7907. Ankita, I already applied for a T visa with you guys and I've received my case number. How long will the work authorization take? From Ankita. Ankita, congratulations and thank you for being a client. So if you applied for a T visa, overall, it's taking about 1.5 to 2 years for the T visa case. Some people are lucky enough to get something called the T visa bona fide determination. If they approve that, then we can get a work permit for you a little bit sooner. But the reality is that they're not approving the bona fide determinations very. It's like they spin a wheel. It's like they spin a wheel about when they decide to approve it. Okay. But Ankita, thank you for being a client. What if 10-year green card expired? Any issues if I renew today? From Blessed or BL322ED? Well, depends on when your card expired and whether you're in the US or outside. So and if you have any criminal issues, all of those things are going to determine if you're going to have any sort of problems in getting your renewal of your green card approved. Mark Schoenberg, thank you so much. Alejandra Gonzalez, do you expect there to be any changes in regard to VAWA qualifications? I'm a current client working on my VAWA application for Alejandra. Alejandra, first of all, thank you for being a client. No, we don't expect any changes. I don't expect any changes. The law is the law. The law is what it is. The law is not changing. Trump cannot change it. Maybe the one thing that I think might happen is more slowdowns and maybe more requests for evidence. But like we're not even seeing additional requests for evidence at this moment either. So I don't really expect much to change. Okay. All right, guys, that's all the time that I have for today. Thank you for joining. My name is Mamita Rahman. Our telephone number is 212-248-7907. Thank you so much for everybody who's joining. I know that times are very, very stressful and that, like it's scary out there. I understand that. I understand how scary it can be. Just want to remind you all to keep your head up high. Your immigration status does not define your worth as a human being. You deserve love and respect and equality. And, we are going to get to the equality part one of these days. One of the best things you can do for yourself is just make sure you know what your rights are. Make sure you know what your immigration rights are and go for it. Okay, guys? But until the next time, wishing you all a very, very good night. Thank you and God bless.